could accept the fact that the city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportions. It's its Old Testament, real wrath of God type stuff. Skies, rivers, seas, water, 40 years of darkness, the sea of rocks, human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, heaven's chariot.
A stuttering farm child who became a voice of rolling thunder as one of America's most versatile actors in stage, film, and television. A career that pummeled race relations, Shakespeare's rhapsodic tragedies, and the faceless menace of Darth Vader. That's right. James Earl Jones passed away Monday at his home in Dutchess County, New York, at the age of 93. From destitute days working in a diner and living in a $19 a month cold water flat, Mr. Jones climbed to Broadway and Hollywood stardom with talent, drive, and remarkable vocal cords. He was abandoned as a child by his parents, raised by a racist grandmother, and mute for years in his stutterer's shame. But he learned to speak again with Herculean will. All had much to do with his success. So did plays that he did when he was a young actor exploring racial hatred in the national experience, television soap operas that boldly cast a black man as a doctor in the 1960s, and a decision by George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, to put an anonymous, let me just say that again, an anonymous, uncredited African-American rumbling voice behind the grotesque mask of the galactic villain Darth Vader. The rest was accomplished by, of course, Mr. Jones and his own talent himself, a prodigious body of work that encompassed scores of plays, nearly 90 television network dramas and episodic series, some 120 movies. They all included his voice work, much of it uncredited. Can you imagine that? Uncredited. How many times was James Earl Jones giving his amazing, beautiful voice, and yet it being uncredited, including the Star Wars trilogy? Did you know that? Well, at least he was credited for something, and that was the voiceover of Mufasa in The Lion King in Disney's 1994 animated musical film. He also reprised that role in the computer animation remake in 2019. Mr. Jones was no matinee idol. He was not Cary Grant. He was not Denzel Washington. You know what really resonated was his bulky, everyman suited stature of everyday characters, his range of forcefulness and subtlety when compared to Morgan Freeman and other, Cindy Poitier, and many other African-American actors, black actors, who set the standard and raised the bar just like he did. He was not a singer, but his voice was powerful. Mr. Jones, he collected Tony Awards. He collected Golden Globes. He collected Emmy Awards, Kennedy Center honors, and even honorary Academy Award recognition. I'm sure you are all familiar with James Earl Jones and his work. Under artistic and competitive demands of daily stage work and heavy commitments to television and Hollywood, pressures that burn out many actors, Mr. Jones was the rock. James Earl Jones was the rock. James Earl Jones was the rock. He was the solid foundation. He was the anchor through eras of Hollywood that highlighted racism just because the fact that he was not even credited. Think about that for a moment. Sign of the times. He once appeared in 18 plays in 30 months, often made a half dozen films a year, including television work. And he did it for half a century, giving thousands of performances and captivating audience, moviegoers, and critics, with people not even knowing when he was doing it. They were dazzled by his presence, a bear of a man, 6'2" and 200 pounds, dominating the stage with his barrel chest, a large head, emotional fires, spitting out his lines into the front rows with people captivated every time he opened his mouth. The audiences were mesmerized by the voice. Lear's Roaring Crash into Madness, Othello's Sweet Balm, and Timbre of the Voice. Oberon's Last Rapture of Titania. The Queen of the Fairies on a Midsummer Night. He liked to portray kings. That's what he liked to do. He liked to portray kings and generals, garbage men and bricklayers. Imagine that for a moment. Can I just sit there and say something? Thulsa Doom, Darth Vader, kings and generals. But yet on the stage, garbage men, bricklayers, the Fence. Are you familiar with the Fence? Performing Shakespeare in Central Park. Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Ernest Thompson's Confrontation with Morality on Golden Pond. Some theater goers, aware of Mr. Jones' childhood affliction, discerned occasional subtle hesitation in his delivery lines. You know why? It's because he stuttered. We'll get to that in a few moments. The pauses were deliberate, a technique of self-restraint learned by stuttering and learning to control the stuttering, to control involuntary repetitions. But what? What? If you know about stuttering, if you know about trying to articulate yourself and the words, and you can't do it. You can't do it. You're sitting there, you're reaching out, and you're trying to grasp the words, and you can't do it because guess what? You have an affliction, is what the doctors say, that you stutter. And that you can't sit there and get the right words out. That was James Earl Jones. Theater goers aware of Mr. Jones's childhood affliction discerned occasional subtle hesitation in delivery of his lines. But, like I said, the pauses were deliberate. Far from the distracting concept of being ridiculous. Pauses. Pauses when you have to sit there and understand that it uses a force That's right. Do you hear me? The pauses. The pauses in which you hear the words. Out of force of emotion in the moment. Mr. Jones, well, he profited from a deep analysis of meaning in his lines. All of those lines that were given over and over again, not only on stage, but also in movies. But it became a nightly ritual during performances when he was doing Mr. Wilson's Pulitzer Prize winning drama, Fences, in 1987. You know, we should play that. But I don't know if I don't know if we could do that. Because here it is like, here I am on a broadcast signal, and I want to play James Earl Jones in Fences. And people say that, well, you know, you can't play that. Why? Is it because he sits there and he looks at his son and he calls him a racial term? That many white people sit there and use all the time, derogatory, but he sits there and he calls his son that. Listen to me, boy. I don't have to like you, but you're my son. And it's my duty to do what is right for you. Those phrases, which Mr. Jones portrays a sanitation worker brooding over broken dreams, a once promising baseball career, looking at his son, calling his son names and derogatory terms that people say that, well, you know what? White people can't say that, but you know what? I'm going to call my son that. And I need you to wake up. Wake up. Oh, listen, I was not here to like you, but it's my duty because I'm your father. And I need to do what's best for you because that's my duty. Fences, it ran for 15 months on Broadway. And James Earl Jones won a Tony for Best Actor. Shortly thereafter, his technique was then employed in the Star Wars trilogy. All three films, A New Hope, 1977, Empire Strikes Back, 1980, and Return of the Jedi in 1983. His voice, going along with a long black cape, a helmet that filtered his hissing breath. Mr. Jones spoke in a narrowly afflected range, almost monotone, to make every phrase sound threatening. Credited for his voice work in the third film, but at his request, was not credited in the first two until the special edition in 1997. Mr. Jones is one of the first black actors to appear regularly in the daytime soap operas, playing a doctor in The Guiding Light and in As the World Turns in the 1960s. Television became a staple of his career. He appeared in the dramatic series The Defenders, Touched by an Angel, Homicide, Roots, The Next Generation, a whole bunch of other things, and Mr. Jones's first Hollywood role was a small but memorable B-52 bomber in Stanley Kubrick's 1964 satire, One Nuclear War, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Drama critics recorded his steady progress as an actor. Jones did not win a film stardom until 1970 when he played when he played Jack Jefferson, a character on Jack Johnson, the first black boxing champion in The Great White Hope. Reprising his role on Broadway in 1968, he won a Tony on stage and was nominated for an Oscar for the movie. Although he was never active in the civil rights movement, Mr. Jones said his early career that he admired Malcolm X, and he too might have been a revolutionary had he not become an actor. He said his contributions to civil rights lay in roles that dealt with racial issues. There were many, but the experience helped clarify his feelings about race. Even though he was born in Mississippi on January 17th in 1931, but when he was 5 and his absent mother remarried, he moved away and left. She left him, and he was raised by her parents. Abandoned by his parents and left the boy with raw wounds and psychic scars. And he referred to his mother as Ruth. Didn't even call her mom, just called her Ruth. Called his grandparents Papa and Mama, even though the refuge of his surrogate home with them was a troubled place to grow up. I was raised by a very racist grandmother who was part Cherokee, part Choctaw, and black. Okay, so think about this for a moment. His grandmother was racist, but she was Indian and she was black, but she was racist to him. Very, very interesting. Got to sit there and make sure that when I listen, I know that I'm sitting there doing this dramatic read, but sometimes you have to sit there and pull back for a moment. Sit there, recognize the fact that he says, oh, well, his racist grandmother. And you sit there, you think about, well, racist grandmother. Oh, well, she's probably some white woman. No. She was Cherokee and she was black. And she was still racist towards him. Well, at least his heritage. I'm pretty sure that she still loved him. Well, but I don't know. But it's very interesting to think about it. She was the most racist person, bigoted person I ever know, is what he said. She blamed all white people for slavery and Native American and black people for allowing it to happen. So there you go. I mean, so even though she was racist, you would sit there and saying, oh, well, she's just a white woman. I got some white woman grandmother growing. No, she was Cherokee. She was Cherokee and black, but listen, I'm going to say this again. I was raised by a very racist grandmother who was part Cherokee and black. She was the most racist person, bigoted person I have ever known. She blamed all white people for slavery and Native American and black people for allowing it to happen. Traumatized, James began to stammer. By age 8, he was stuttering so badly, and he was so mortified by his affliction that he stopped talking altogether, terrified that only gibberish would come out. Friendless, lonely, didn't have any friends, and he endured this years and years in school and endured it through silence and isolation. No matter how old the character I play, Mr. Jones told Newsweek in 1968, even if I'm playing Lear, those deep childhood memories of stuttering, of not being able to say what I want to say, and not being able to try to talk. It'll come out, and I can't understand it. I understand this, but will people be able to understand me? It was in high school that he had a teacher that found that he had a talent. Had a talent for poetry encouraged him to write. Gaining confidence, he recited poems once a day in class. And throughout that time, the speech impediment subsided. He then joined a debating team and entered a rhetorical contest. Graduating in 1949, he had largely overcome his disability, although the effects lingered, never quite went away, and were always in his mind. Years later, Mr. Jones came to believe that learning to control his stutter was the foundation and the fire that led to his career to become an actor. Just discovering the joy of communicating set it up for me, I think, he told the New York Times in 1974. In a very personal way, once I found out that I could communicate verbally again, it became a very important thing for me, like making up for lost time, making up for all those years I didn't speak. Enrolling at the University of Michigan on a scholarship, taking pre-med courses, joining the drama group, a growing interest in acting, switching majors, focusing on drama and the University School of Music, Theater, and Dance. In a memoir, he said he left college in 1953 without a degree, but resumed studies to later finish his required coursework, receiving his degree in drama in 1955. In college, he also joined the Army under the ROTC commitment and washed out of infantry ranger school. But he did so well in cold weather training in the Rockies that he considered a military career. He was commissioned a second lieutenant in mid-1953 after the end of the Korean War, and was subsequently and then promoted to first lieutenant. All right. In 1955, however, he resigned his commission and moved to New York, determined to be an actor. Lived briefly with his father, whom he had met a few years earlier. He found cheap rooms on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, took odd jobs, studied at the American Theater Wing and Lee Strasberg's Actor Studio. Minor roles in small productions, including 3 plays he performed, but he did start doing Shakespeare in 1960. Henry V, Romeo and Juliet, Richard III, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and during a long run as Othello in 1964. Falling in love with Julene Marie, his Desmond. They were married in 1968, divorced in 1972. In 1982, he married another actress, Cecilia Hart, who also played Desdemona, whatever. So anyway, she died in 2016. But they did have a son. And in the 1970s, most of the 1980s, Mr. Jones was a constant demand for stage work in New York, films in Hollywood, television on both coasts. He took occasional breaks from time to time. His long run with Fences in 1987 and 1988 included a national tour. He did not return to Broadway for many years after that. Not until a couple other different opportunities arose. Coming to America in 1988, a role he reprised at 90 years old, and Coming to America, the second one. But also a resilient writer in the baseball movie A Field of Dreams, and a South African priest in Cry, the Beloved Country. Mr. Jones received the National Medal of Arts from President George Bush at the White House in 1992, Kennedy Center honors, Tony Award in 2017 for a Lifetime Achievement, as well as an honorary Doctorate of Arts degree from Harvard University. James Earl Jones, in terms of what he has done, what his place is, and what I mean by that is his place in acting and also film, television. When I'm talking about James Earl Jones, what I want you to do is think about it for a moment. What is it that James Earl Jones and his acting do you remember? Because I'm going to tell you right now, there are many things. Whether it be from A Great White Hope, his acting in Fences on Broadway, winning Tony Awards, Tulsa Doom in Conan the Barbarian, or the voice of Darth Vader in the Star Wars trilogy. In 2022, Broadway's 110-year-old Court Theater was renamed the James Earl Jones Theater. The reason why is because James Earl Jones set the standard and he raised the bar. Even though he was just a kid raised by a racist Indian black grandmother who stuttered. No, not the grandmother. He stuttered. He stuttered. But when you think about James Earl Jones, do you think about stuttering? Do you think about having that ability, that inability to speak to people and talk to people? Because when you see James Earl Jones, what do you see? 6'2", 200 pounds, a stature of a man who was given a set of cards that were not the best set of cards. And through perseverance and through the talent in which that stirred in his body and his soul, he had a place with all of us. When you hear the name James Earl Jones, what do you think of? You think about those movies, you think about those appearances, you think about the voice work. And my question is did you ever think that someone like that stuttered? It's home for many of us. Because even though someone might have trouble speaking, here are the facts. With much hard work, with much hard work, with a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. I don't care if you have a hard time speaking, or if you stutter. I'm going to tell you right now, hard work pays off. And no matter what anybody says, when you are given an obstacle and you want to get over it, you have the ability to do it. And James Earl Jones epitomizes that. And he epitomized that every time he got on screen and every time he was on stage. James Earl Jones, whose powerful acting resonated voice both on stage and on screen, who gave us characters like Darth Vader, Mufasa, and went on to collect Tony Awards, Golden Globes, Emmy, and honorary Oscar. James Earl Jones, dead at the age of 93. Broadcasting live from WDCE 90.1 FM, from the most trusted puppet in media. Reporting since Roswell, I'm Sam NewsMan, and this is Saturday morning.